All right, so I've made a simple version of the Towers of Hanoi game, and the rules of this game are pretty simple. Um, we need to try to move all of these discs over to another one of these poles, but we can only move one disc at a time, and we cannot put a larger disc on top of a smaller disc. So if we move that there, we'd have to move this one over here, etc. All right, so those are our two rules. We can only move one at a time, and we can't put a larger disc on top of a smaller disc. What we're trying to figure out is how many moves would it take if we had 64 of these discs. All right, I've only made 4 discs, but hopefully this will give us enough information that we can see a pattern and figure out from there how long it would take with 64 discs. All right, so first of all, let's figure out how long it would take or how many moves it would take to move just one disc. Well, that's simple. It would take one move, right? What about if we have 2 discs? Well, there's one move. Second move would be over here, and then 3 moves. So it takes 3 moves to move 2 discs. All right. How about 3 discs? Well, move this one here, 2, and 3. That's the 3 it took us to move 2 discs. Then we move this one here, this one back over to here. There's 6 and 7 moves. So it takes us 7 moves to move 3 discs. All right, let's try 4 discs. So 4 discs, we're going to start here, here, and here. There's our 3 moves. And then here, 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 and here. There's the 7 moves that it took to get our 3 discs moved over. Then there's 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. So for 4 discs, it takes 15 moves. Now let's go to the whiteboard and see if we can figure out a pattern that we can use to figure out how many moves it would take to move 64 discs. All right, so we found that with 1 disc, it took us 1 move. If we had 2 discs, it took us 3 moves. 3 discs took us 7 moves, and 4 discs took us 15 moves. So let's look at this and try to find a pattern in this data. So one thing we might look at first is what's the difference between each of these. So we can see that it's not linear. It's not going up by the same amount each time. From here to here, we added 2 moves. From here to here, we added 4. From here to here, we added 8. Now that's starting to look like a pattern. 2, 4, and 8. We're doubling the number of moves that we're adding each time. And in fact, notice what happens if we add 1 to each of these terms. 1, 3, 7, 15 might not look like a pattern in itself, but if we add 1, notice that we get 1 plus 1 is 2, 3 plus 1 is 4, 7 plus 1 is 8, 15 plus 1 is 16. And we should be able to recognize a pattern in that. 2, 4, 8, 16. We're doubling each time. So we can predict that if we had 5 discs, then we'd double again to get 32. Now, of course, we'd have to add 1 to get that 32. So the number of moves that we could predict if we had 5 discs, we'd predict that there would be 31 moves. Because 31 plus that 1 would give us the 32. And then we could predict that if we had 6 discs, then the number of moves would be 64 minus 1, which would be 63. And we could continue doing that, but this would get really tedious if we went all the way to 64 discs. So the trick to this the way to jump straight to our answer is to figure out, is there a formula that we can put together that's going to tell us how many moves based on how many disks we have? Well, let's rewrite each of these numbers as powers of 2, because we can see that these are powers of 2. This is 2 to the first power. This is 4 is 2 to the second power. 8 is 2 to the third power. 16 is 2 to the fourth power. 32 is 2 to the fifth power. And you can see that those powers correspond with the number of disks. Here's 1 and 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 5, 5. So the formula that we can write here is that the number of moves is going to be equal to 2 to the number of disks, and then we have to subtract this 1. So there's our formula that each of that sums up what our pattern is. And now to figure out the number of moves it would take if we had 64 disks, all we need to do is just plug in 64 for our D. So this would be 2 to the 64th power minus that 1. And now we'll need to put this into a calculator. But when we do, we'll find that the number of moves it's going to take for 64 disks is going to be 18 quintillion, 446 quadrillion, 744 trillion, 73 billion, 709 million, 551,615. So that's how many moves it would take if we had 64 disks in our Tower of Hanoi game.